Hi, welcome. You've joined SLI's webinar series. This is the SLI webinar, What You Don't Know About B2B Commerce, or how to make sure you're getting the revenue you're missing from your B2B site. And thank you for those of you who have joined us for the first time. This is our ongoing series, deep dives into specific areas of online retail, or in this case, B2B e-commerce, and what you need to do, the best practices that you need to do to be successful. And as always, I am your host, Tim Callan. Tim Callan, CMO of SLI Systems, and as always, we have a special guest. And this month we're joined by Albert Wu. Albert Wu is the Managing Director of the U.S. at Intershop and has extensive experience not only in the online, in the e-commerce space, but in just providing commerce solutions to B2B solutions for, I think, more than 20 years. Right, Albert?
That's correct, Tim. Thanks for the invite as well, and it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to co-presenting this webinar and getting providing some suggestions and interacting with our audience.
That's great. It's great to have you, Albert. And just a couple things about Albert. He's has in your years, you have not only been experienced in B2B, but B2C and G2C, government to commerce, and that involves on-premise, SaaS, hybrid solutions, Fortune 1000 companies. I think you've implemented some of the earliest and largest enterprise B2B e-commerce solutions over your career.
That's correct. I mean, we've seen the B2B space evolve from a complex environment to what we're going to talk about today. We've implemented some of the larger B2B implementations back in the mid-2000s to what we're going to talk about in a software as a service platform for where B2B market's heading.
And that's a great transition into, why don't you just take 30 seconds and tell us a bit about Intershop so everybody knows where you're coming from.
Absolutely. As you see from the slide, Intershop is one of the leaders in the B2B space for enterprise e-commerce platforms. We've been in the industry for over 20 years. My history in the B2B space has been from complex B2B systems to software as a service systems that we see that's more prominent in the B2B arena today. We've delivered strategies globally for the likes of HP, Xerox, VF Corporation, to name a few. And the evolution of B2B that we're going to talk about sees how it's transformed from what we know as personal users in the B2C space and how it's undertaking some of that experience and bringing it into the B2B world.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today is exactly that, is how we take the advantage of what the online retail, the B2C world has learned and use that to make B2B Internet more successful. So I'm not going to read down the agenda items, but these are some of the things that we're going to hit on today. And why don't we start with, let's just talk about, first of all, what did the old school B2B look like? Apart from that, I had one of those Mac Classics. I remember that computer. But apart from that, what did old school B2B look like?
You know, it's about relationships back in the old school B2B sales arena, where you personalize your categories, your catalogs, physical assets that you would provide to your customers, not having necessarily tools to be able to converse with your customers consistently. So being on the phone, not being able to come out of the office, and actually having to go directly to your customers and talk to your customers. That world's changing a little bit, Tim, in the B2B world, where we're going. We're going to an arena where the salesperson actually has to be similar to the customer. They have to be able to see every aspect of the customer and what they need, what they require as the individual, as a company, giving them the tools to be able to interact with what the customer wants to see online, not just from a physical asset.
I think I saw a figure from Forrester recently. It said that, I'm looking at my notes, 64% of people in a B2B role are making purchases online at least once a week.
That's correct.
Right. So that's pretty high. So let me, real quick, before, I should have said this, questions. Let's talk about how to take questions from the audience, because I forgot this, folks. You do have a questions interface on your webinar interface, and you may type questions in there and submit them, and we will see them. And what we'll do is we'll try to get your questions. We do have to have everybody on mute because we tend to get a lot of attendees on these webinars. If we don't have you on mute, we get a lot of background noise. So we do have to keep everybody on mute, but you can put a question in, and we'll see them, and we'll answer them either in the flow, if that's what makes sense, or we'll hold some of them and we'll do them in Q&A at the end. So don't feel shy about putting those in, and we'll make sure that we get those answered. So with that, I think you touched on this already, but some of the ways that B2B commerce are changing, right? So we've got some facts and figures here. This death of the B2B salesman. So Forrester's Andy Hoare kind of took a strong stand to say this old-fashioned salesman, the guy on the phone, is going away. I don't know if we think it's going away, but it definitely has to change.
Yeah, I think it's a transformation. I think the salesperson needs to ensure that they are able to see what the customer wants to see online.
Yeah.
Right. So it's giving them the tools to be able to interact with their customers. They're not going away. You still want that relationship. And we'll talk about some of that stuff later. You still want that relationship, but you want to give them the tools to be able to interact and be able to provide the online capabilities that the customer wants.
Yeah, and that's what the stats here point out, right? That if you all look at those bullets, that basically what it's saying is, don't deprive me of the ability to self-service myself on the internet. And I know I'm in this kind of situation all the time with things where, there's plenty of occasions where I know perfectly well what I want to do, and I'd love to just have a web interface, jump in, find my thing, make my decision, get out, and don't have to sit at a phone tree or try to find a person at their phone or all those things that I just view as obstacles to getting my work done.
Correct.
I think your average B2B buyer has the exact same attitude, and that's what these stats support.
That's correct.
Right, cool. So, so what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about what this new B2B world looks like, right? Instead of a guy on a phone, it's a guy on a computer, and of course he's smiling because there's a rule that you always have to show smiling people on computers when you're selling computer services. And so we've done that. Auditors, we did that. All right, go ahead, Al. Or I guess I was going to talk to this. So one of the things that, these are some stats, right, where basically we took complementary stats for what would the year 2020 look like for the B2B e-commerce world and the U.S. B2B world. And as you can see here, these are really high numbers, right? So if we're looking at $6.7 trillion as a worldwide market, and more than $1 trillion of that is in the United States, that's massive purchasing that's going on.
And that's probably what, almost 3 times what B2C is going to be?
Yeah, exactly. That's like a multiple of B2C. So it's pretty crazy. And let's see. Here's what it looks like as more of a breakdown. So we can see kind of how this ramps over time. But it's a very healthy expected ramp that we're looking at moving forward. That's, again, these are, source says here's ZDNet, but that was ZDNet reporting Forrester. Those are Forrester numbers again. So, very credible. And one of the big things I think that's coming up here, and a lot of what we're going to talk about, really, we're still stage setting at this point, is we've seen that Amazon has gone into the B2B world in a big way. So Amazon recently had something, they have a new service that they put out called Amazon Business. And Amazon Business is basically, it's superseded Amazon Supply, and part of the point of Amazon Business is they want to do for businesses exactly what they do for individual shoppers.
Correct.
Right.
And it's really targeting the SMB market, giving the businesses out there the ability to go to one-stop shop to buy all their needs, supplies for their office across the board, whether that's IT, whether that's office supplies or whatnot, giving them that one-stop shop. So there is, they see the trend of where B2B is going, and they're trying to ride that trend.
And I think I agree with that point about SMB, but if I may, I'd like to put a little color on that, which is they're targeting the SMB business first. But I very much am of the belief that Amazon wants all of the money.
Correct.
And you can only imagine that the company will try to go up market over time and will be figuring out the ways to go up market.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so, excuse me, folks, I aspirated a little out of there. So, some of the things that Amazon is doing, right, they're taking a lot of their best practices. So first of all, it's this wonderful seamless experience. It's all of the usability and the A/B testing and all that stuff they've done. Their amazing interface design prowess that they've brought to the experience, and they're testing and refining and looking at the metrics and all of that stuff the same way that they do on the regular site. And some of the things that you see that are very effective on the regular site, like free 2-day shipping for any order over $49. $49. Millions and millions of SKUs, ability to track spending with POs, feature comparison, ability to manage multiple users. These are all capabilities that are built into the Amazon experience, the Amazon business experience from the ground up.
Right, and that's just interesting because you and I are avid online users. We get different experiences from different sites that we do and shop at personally for ourselves. And the expectation now is that we're no different. We're B2B buyers as well.
Right.
We buy for our companies and whatnot. And our expectation is now that we're taking our B2C personal experience that we're expecting and bringing them to B2B.
Oh, yeah, and it's horrible, right? When you go into some site that's badly done, it's just so aggravating.
Yep.
When I can see the ways that it could be better, and I do this all the time. I want to send little notes to whoever owns the website and says, change these things on this page, right. Because it's just there's things that really could be better, and that affects you, right? If there's another alternative, you know, and I think again, if I may, one of the things we've seen in the past is it's sort of like there has been a scarcity of other alternatives, so it didn't really matter.
Correct.
But as other alternatives are available where you can go do that commerce, we should expect people to gravitate to the ones that serve their needs better.
Right. I mean, the market is there for the taking for anybody. There isn't that transformation, and we're seeing a transformation now where the expectation is that the B2C innovations that we see are expected into the B2B world.
Right. And see, so like we see here in bullet number 3, what I wrote, you know, most B2B sellers are just getting warmed up with e-commerce, right? And I think this is true. It's like the online retail world has 15 years of learning that didn't always cross the gap into the B2B world. And there absolutely are sites that are using best practices. I don't want to pretend that there aren't. But I think they're in the minority.
They are.
Right?
Right. What we saw in the mid and late 2000s was B2B systems that had to cater for complex procurement processes. No different from your government. You sign 10,000 paper trails just to make an execution of a purchase. Right. So you still have that process in the back end of the system, companies that don't change, but how you bring that complexity into a simplified user experience for the likes of you and me who are used to a B2C scenario, the less complex flows of a user, how do you bring them to a category search, a browse, and then a purchase.
I think you're right. And an interesting, and I didn't think of this until right now when you said that, one thing that people might be thinking of on the call is, so what if, so you're right, there are difficult, complex things, and I can't solve all of these things. I can't boil the ocean. And what I would offer is, yeah, but why don't you isolate the things you can make better?
Correct.
And make them better, at least.
Correct.
And if there's still complexity and it has to do with paper trail and things along those lines and permissions, yeah, that complexity maybe is built into your business model, but there are a lot of other areas that you could improve. Right. And you can still improve those areas.
Right. And just going back to earlier when we talked about Amazon, I think that's what they're doing. They're taking their experience in the B2C market, and the B2C is really about user purchasing. Right. Really nothing else. The self-service model is there, but it's about purchasing. What the B2C in the industry, it's a little bit more than purchasing. It's about giving customers a greater tools of reporting to understand what their buying history is, not necessarily at an order level, but providing analytics and reports to say, oh, well, these are the trends I'm seeing. These are consistencies that where I buy more in my last part of my quarter versus later in the year. So it's giving them additional tools, and I think that's where Amazon is not necessarily focused yet. They're just focused on the purchasing of an individual.
Right, and that's maybe another way to, I mean, one of the classic approaches to beat Amazon in the online retail world is be really, 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 really good at the thing I'm good at, right?
Exactly.
And that's a flavor of that.
Right.
So, and that's a good kind of lead-in because, to some degree what we are here to talk about today is, okay, Amazon's gunning for you, right? They want your money. What are the smart things that we can do to make sure that we keep our money? So, first of all, I got to talk about site search. It's my thing, but site search is definitely part of it. And why does site search matter to B2B? Inarguably, it matters more to B2B. They tend to have very deep SKUs. They tend to have a more mission-oriented visitor.
Yep.
Somebody's coming to the website to get a thing done as opposed to an entertainment-oriented visitor.
Correct.
Right? And search always works better with mission. There's lots of research that we've conducted and shared over the course of this series and other sources that says that mission-oriented visitors gravitate more to search and respond better to good quality search than entertainment-oriented visitors. Here, we got some stats here, right? 60% of B2B buyers want enhanced search functionality on supplier sites. That's from Accenture, and the average conversion rate in a B2B survey is about 10%, which is 3 times the average reported by B2C.
And that's actually interesting because we do see with our B2B customers is that because of the deep structures of a product that you need to provide information or search against, different from the B2C world, the advanced search or the capabilities of filtering and providing deep level content lookups becomes more of a priority than it is in the B2C world. Yeah.
Right.
So having your data structured correctly, having the data presented correctly, being able to provide filters and search within the deep levels of a product information becomes more of a top need.
Right. And one of the interesting things is, so at SLI we have researched the aggregated behavior in the online retail world, and we see that shoppers who use search generate 3 times the revenue, 2.99 actually, times the revenue of shoppers who do not. And I would bet you that we see something similar in the B2C. We haven't researched it, but I bet you we'd see something similar in the B2C world.
Yeah.
So let's look at some sites, right? And these are business-to-business sites. These are people who, in some cases, don't even have a shopping cart. But they've tried to use the best practices of online retail. So here we are. This is Anderson Doors and Windows. I love this site. The whole site experience, top to bottom, left to right, wall to wall, feels like an online retail site. It is clean. It is navigable. It is well usability tested. You can find the things you're looking for. The search is excellent. They integrate all of the right things. So in this case, you start to do search for awning windows. And in addition to seeing products that are actually awning windows, I'm seeing things like specs and installment guides and all of the critical information that I need as a builder or a contractor about how to use these awning windows.
Right.
So they've pulled all the information I need, not just the products, but all the rest of that critical stuff, and they're making it all available in a very navigable way. It really is an example of a B2B site that's using best practices for the B2C world.
And that's actually a good point, because in B2C, we don't necessarily think about searching, when I say content, something that's not product related. We tend to want product. But that's the focus of B2C. Right. Really, your top priority is purchase. And when B2B, it's not that it's not a priority of purchase, but it's more about providing all relevant information. And that information could be content, not necessarily a product. And you mentioned it here. It could be a PDF of some sort. Yeah,
exactly. It's specs. They've got pictures of the windows and the doors actually installed.
Right.
So you can see what the real experience is going to look like. So all that kind of stuff is there so that I'm a builder and I can go and I can figure out exactly what I need.
Yep.
And I can place an order and then it gets shipped to me and I do the whole thing on the website and I never have to pick up the phone and call my rep.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. And that's kind of the vision. Another great example is Lakeshore Learning. So Lakeshore Learning sells a lot to the K-12 market. And same kind of thing. They're selling to schools. People in schools, they're essentially, for our purposes, we can think of them as a B2B or maybe a B2G kind of sale, and it's the same thing. It is the best. It's no different from going to the website where you would shop for educational toys for your kids.
Right. It's seamless, easy, clean customer experience.
Right. They got guides, so when I'm at Lecture Learning, I can do things like say what grade I'm teaching, and then the products that are age appropriate for that grade, or say what subject I teach, and the products that are age appropriate for that subject kind of automatically bubble up for me. So they've got all of this intelligence built in to help me navigate through and zero in on the thing that I'm really seeking to buy.
Right. And this also helps with, it helps generate proper analytics as well. The easier a user experience you provide your customers, you can collect the analytics to understand how best to cater to them as well. If you make it too complex, you lose some of the analytics, you lose some of that conversion, and you lose the fact that they're there on your site for a reason. They're there to really purchase. If you look at B2B versus B2C, like you said earlier, from a browse personal experience to a need to have to purchase from my suppliers.
That is a great point. And one of the things that we've seen that is the best practice in the online retail world that is well understood is that you measure the P-Waddly out of everything, right? Yeah. And is that a real word? Well, whether or not it's a real word, you do it. And then, and again, in the B2B world, we don't necessarily come in with those traditions. But the best companies, the ones that are most successful in this online space, are adopting those practices that they're learning from the online retail world, and they're applying them in their B2B life. Another company that does a great job of search is Lenovo, right? So very, very B2B-oriented company, selling a lot into businesses in the enterprise, much more a business set of products than a consumer set of products. But when I go to this website and I'm shopping, it is no different from the results I'm getting on when I'm shopping for a Christmas gift for my mom. And we've got prices and savings and ratings and call to action buttons and all of the critical things, nice pictures of the products, and all of those critical things that make you successful as a retailer have been brought over into this world as well.
Because what we mentioned earlier, your expectation now as a B2B purchaser is no different from yourself buying for a gift, for your wife, for your kids, your parents. There's no difference. You expect this information. You expect to see that it's giving you the feedback that you require to make your purchase for your company. Right.
So that's a big piece of it. I think another thing that you have a lot of insights on, and Albert, something I'd like to transition to, is the whole world of support.
Right. So it's interesting. I talk a lot about the past, where in the B2B world, it was really about how to bring the complexities of the online, of offline online. But Tim, you made a good point earlier. It's looking at what you do best and how can you do it as quickly as possible, and then how you then make things a little bit more easier for your customers. Today, our expectation as users, no different from B2C and B2B, is that we expect a good customer experience from start to finish, whether that's from a purchase to a journey of getting your stuff shipped to you, to be able to return it. You expect that overall experience where you have the self-service tools to see the information that you need to buy, that you are able to manage your outputs on the system. So the customer experience and the supportability of a system becomes even more important in the B2B world. One interesting story about, in my experience in Asia Pacific, service is not necessarily one of the top key items in the list. Right. So, but in the B2B space, they're doing a transformation. They're making service as the top priority. So what they're enabling their customers is to tell us how we could better ourselves in our service model. Are we satisfying your needs from a product all the way to a delivery of the item, to the ability to contact our reps if it's necessary, to be able to return an item through your own self-service model in your accounts. So it's the whole journey from start to finish. And it's interesting that they're focusing that criteria on how we better our services in Asia.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And and again, there's so many ways we can learn from the online retail world, just things like easy returns, that are critical for online retailers, and why don't we bring the same thing? Or ratings and reviews, right? Or things like that. In fact, speaking of ratings and reviews, I think one of the areas that online retail has done very well that B2B can learn from is making things more personalized and more specific to the individual's experience and the individual's situations. So it's things like ratings, reviews, recommendations, right, is one of the big ones. Again, B2B buyers would like to see ratings and reviews according to Forrester. And B2B buyers would like to see recommendations. Yeah. Because why not? If there are other businesses like me, if I run a restaurant and other restaurants say, I like these plates, I don't like these plates, they chip all the time, that's very valuable information to me.
Absolutely. Right? I mean, no, usually it's valuable. I mean, we want to know if what we're buying, what we're looking at, has the right value to us, right? So I want to know if my counterparts are expecting the same things or seeing the same things of that particular product.
Right. And recommendations is a great example. So this is the Amazon welcome page. And 75% of the Amazon welcome page is recommendations. And you know that they don't use a square inch of that page in a way that isn't earning for them. So we know that they've learned empirically that works. And there's no reason to believe that wouldn't work in a B2B world as well. And in fact, we see it. So let's go back to Lenovo. So here I am, I've done Lenovo, I've done a search for a Yoga Pro 2, I'm doing comparing models on a Yoga Pro 2, and what do I have on the right? I have recommendations, right? That these are automatically being put in. They're contextual. In this case, they're recommending a Yoga 3, right? You're looking at Yoga 2. Why don't you look at the newer generation product?
Right.
Built right in there.
And what we also see is that there's customized category views for a lot of these B2B customers where customer A we're selling to them only in one particular taxonomy, while customer B sees a different taxonomy. Mm-hmm. But why not open up your catalog to your various customers, right? Showing them that, because what's happening is that customers used to only buying certain things from certain suppliers. But you now have the ability to market towards them in a different way that you did before.
Sure.
Right? Before, you would send out physical assets, but today, they're interacting with your site. You're providing them information for them to open up their mindset to say, oh, there's other things I could get from you.
Right.
Look at what else I could buy from you. Right. Look at what else you offer.
And they are going to be inclined to do that. If you're a good vendor and you're giving them good services and they want to have one invoice and one box that shows up at the loading dock and one website that I go to and one phone number that I call if there's a problem.
Correct.
Yeah, that's wonderful, right? One throat to choke, as they say.
Exactly.
Yeah. So some of the recommendations, strategies that work well, and these are all things that are available and people can continue that you can see here. It's things by, things that are related to or most popular for the items that you're already looking at, by search or by attributes. You can use cross-sell and upsell opportunities. So people who buy this also bought that. People who looked at this also bought that. You can highlight your new products. This is a great way to get new products out in front of people so they know that they're available. We saw an upsell strategy on the Lenovo page, right, where I saw one product, but they're trying to show me a next generation product, and then frequently bought together. And these are all strategies that, depending on where you are in the path to purchase, work very well. And we also recommend that people use different strategies in different places. Right. So if you've indicated nothing about what you want, you just land on the home page, it's a great time to do a most popular.
Right.
But then if I look at a product, it's a great time to do a bought also bought.
Right, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And some of these actually becomes more prominent in the B2B space. So things that you recently viewed or recently bought becomes more of a need in the B2B world because you want to compare. So comparisons actually in the B2C space has kind of dropped a little bit. No one really used the compare opportunity. But in B2B, compare becomes important. You buy something that was last year's model. You want to know what's different this year.
Sure. So, do I want to buy the new one, or do I not really care?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So information, recommendations, case, in that sense, becomes even more important.
So, and I feel like we've kind of pounded on this a little, but we'll take one more run and then we'll leave it alone. At the end of the day, in a lot of ways, you need to ask yourself, what would I want as a consumer? And if I would want it as a consumer, at least ask yourself, does it have a place in my B2B purchase process?
Right.
We know they're not identical, but there's a lot of chances to improve based on that.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. And, we've got things here, things like rewards, coupons, targeted offers. These are all things that work very well in the online shopping space. Why couldn't you use them with your B2B customers?
Yeah. I mean, loyalty structures and point systems, we're all used to that. We all sign up for hotel programs, airline programs, because there's an incentive to do it, right? And those incentives work in the B2B world as well.
Sure. I want to save my own dollars. Why on earth would I not want to save my budget dollars? Yeah. Right? Yeah. And get my discounts or get my rewards back. So
correct.
Absolutely, 100%. All right, let's do a poll. I think it's time for a poll. So the poll we have is for our audience members, and please fill this out, audience members. When you think about B2B commerce, e-commerce for your site, what are your priorities? What are the things that are on this list that you care about and want to actually do something with? So everybody please click on these, fill them out, and hit the submit button. All right, and so Albert, which of these do you kind of see as valuable in when you deal with customers?
I would say that the first most important factor here would probably be improving the UX and UI. I think where B2Bs come from is a complex user experience. Providing a seamless UX UI in the B2B space for your customers is important because, once again, you and I are B2B users. We're also B2C users, and we expect that. Okay, so I think we've had time for people to fill out the poll, so I'm going to close it in 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.5, 1. Okay, let's close it. So let's go on and let's actually look at the results. So here's what we got. So 39% almost say products and service recommendations. That's the top rank. We got a good mix here. Mobile's lagging, but other than that, it's a pretty good mix. So what do you think of that? No, I think that's right. But improved UI, UX flows into site search. So that's kind of one-to-one because you got to provide the necessary tools for your customer to come in and quickly find something. And we know that searching across no matter what industry, it's probably 75% of where traffic starts coming in, right? That's where most of your customers are interacting with the search engine. Recommendations, another thing in the B2B world where we just talked about earlier is how you introduce your customers to other parts of your category. Right. Yep, exactly. So, we did notice that mobile is lacking. Yeah. Well, that was very fortunate. Thanks, guys, for setting me up with your answers to the questions. Because let's talk about mobile. Yeah. Maybe it shouldn't be lagging. It should not be lagging. And so, elaborate. So, it's interesting. I'm going to bring people back a little bit of history in the B2C space. And there was a big need back in the times to create a separate mobile site. And then probably a little more than 24 months ago, responsive design came out about how you provide your customers the same experience across the different channels, across the different devices. So now B2C's jumped onto the responsive design framework, and B2B, once again, we talked about this where B2C innovates for B2B, and now B2B has jumped onto that bandwagon as well, and we talked about earlier, simplicity. So giving your customers now the same experience across the different devices, now you see B2B leveraging the responsive framework. But there are some limitations, and you brought up a good limitation on your fourth bullet point, where in the responsive framework, you are limited in your real estate. Right. You can't just provide certain personalization content because it has to work around all devices. Right. You are limited, right? But in B2B, we're gonna see where. So today, jumping today, B2B is leveraging that framework. What I kind of see is that I see that we're going to have to probably rethink our strategies in mobile, because we're going to talk about this later as well. Mobile is going to be an extension to our daily activities. Today, there are devices to check email, but they're not necessarily a device that we're going to use at work heavily, and it will be something that we'll start using particularly for activities in our office.
Right.
So we're going to have to start looking at, well, is responsive the right strategy for your B2B, or is it going back to having a separate mobile site?
So maybe get an MDOT where I can really optimize it.
Correct.
Very specifically for that environment. I think we do see some examples here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in this example, you see how complex a B2B purchasing experience can be. In a B2C world, for the most part, we're purchasing a single item for ourselves or for our loved ones and whatnot. In B2B, you're purchasing mass quantities for your company. So in this example, you have variations of a belt where you might be buying different sizes, large quantities of each. So we got to give the customers, so we got to ask ourselves how we provide a complex user experience in a simplified user experience where you're buying large quantities within your cart, your checkout process. And if you look at the example on the left, what the customer wants is they want the ability to tell me what was the ratio of my ordering history, and can I use that ratio? So can I use? I used to buy 20% mediums, 50% smalls, and the rest in different sizes. Can I use that ratio, or can you give me the ability to make a new ratio for my purchasing experience? So it becomes very complex, and so our challenge is, as a customer, how we make that a little bit more user friendly.
Right. Right. Yeah. Exactly. And then there's the whole world of apps.
Right. So once again, we as private users use our app. App was a phenomenon back probably 36 months ago, where everybody wanted to build an app for their consumers. It hasn't really taken off in the sense that we use apps today privately for banking, for personal use, financial use, not necessarily from a browse experience, from wanting to purchase. It's not as heavily. How
many stores apps am I really going to have on my phone?
Correct.
I have to be very serious about that.
Correct. And we have a lot of apps on our phones where we don't even use them, right? So, but in the B2B space, apps will become an extension of your tools in your office. You're going to bring your phone with you, your tablets with you to your warehouse to ensure that your inventories are properly at the right threshold. So providing an app to use your full functionality of your phone becomes important, because you want to give your customers the tools to interact with you from the various different channels that you're going to open up to them, right? So app will be I would say one of the top priorities. So when we do this webinar in a few years, we'll probably see mobile and app a greater need for that for businesses, as well as search and UX and UI.
Right, and there's a couple things. One is, if you're like a major provider, then it makes good sense, right? If you're an important provider for me and you're pretty critical of my business, I'm in purchasing and you're one of my very important things, it makes good sense that I very well may download your app. But then number two is, as they begin to use these apps and these become a critical part of what they do to get their business done, they'll become habituated to working that way.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You're also giving them the tools, right? And I think these tools that we talked about in the beginning, it's not just for your customers, but it's also for your now new age sales agent, salesman, saleswoman, right? It's giving them the tools to also interact with the customers in every different aspects and with every different tools. Once again, whether that's a tablet or a phone, where if they're a construction person out in the construction site, they want to be able to pull up your PDF and look at the specs of a particular item.
Sure.
Right? Because they're walking around with a tablet, not walking around with a desktop, right? So these tools now, these devices become tools. And it's going to be really important. We walk into Nordstrom's and these shopping centers today, and they're walking around with their iPhones, and they could ring you up on their phone.
Right.
Right? So it's an extension of what they do, and it's going to be part of their DNA. They're going to be using these apps constantly within their 9-to-5 jobs.
I believe it. Now, also another trend is SaaS.
Right. Interesting. So we talked about earlier the complexity of B2B and where we need to simplify our B2B offerings. What SaaS provides in the B2B world is allows you to you mentioned earlier, do what you do best, enabling that to your consumers, and then understanding how you then enhance that capability and strategically plan for the future. Because B2B is new. We saw earlier, the trending is trending upwards. So how you provide services for your customers where they don't have to worry about the platform, they don't have to worry about the IT aspects of it, they don't have to worry so much about SOI provides them the ability not to worry about the search management, and how you allow them to understand the customers better, how to interact with customers more from a digital perspective, and letting them just concentrate on the business.
Right. And so again, if we look at online retailers come out of this tradition of, originally they were software developers and they were sitting and they were developing websites, and kind of their core competency was build an online experience.
Right.
Now you get somebody who says, well, my core competency is I manufacture things in a factory.
Right.
And do I really want that other thing to become my core competency,
right.
or do I want to partner with somebody who can handle that?
Correct. And they also having a digital strategy, building on that digital strategy, having the right support staff within your company, it will change the way you do business. Right? They're used to offline, they're used to physical stores, they're used to warehousing, but now having the capability online 24/7, 365, it's a learning curve. And how we simplify that learning curve is by offering this as a service model, and it's one less thing for them to worry about. And it allows them actually to grow as well, allows the customers to understand where the B2B strategy needs to be, and allows them to chop and change as they move forward, as they understand different customer segments that they need to target, different business verticals that they can enable, different channels that they can enable. It allows them to grow.
Got it. Al, I feel like we have talked about 1/10 of what you could have said on any of these topics.
Correct.
But the time has flown by. So maybe we'll try to get you back to go deeper on one of these topics in a future webinar. But for now, what we need to do is we need to summarize. We went from what you don't know to what you now know. So what are some of the big takeaways here?
Site search is definitely important.
Yeah.
We know that site search is important. But we also know that where your customers are no different from yourself. Your expectations in the B2C space is what it is today, and it's going to be what B2B needs to be today and tomorrow. You expect to be serviced in a way where you could service yourself. You could go online and buy the things that you need for your business anytime, anywhere. So you want that same capability.
Yeah.
And what we know today is that let's simplify and understand our customers and provide them the tools, the self-service models that you expect in the B2C space, in the B2B space.
Right. Yeah. Yep, exactly. And, again, if you're not doing this, let's put it this way. If you don't do it, someone else will.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely believe that. So let's go to questions. I have a few questions here, and I'll encourage people, if you have a question, go ahead and type that in. We've got some to start with, and I bet you we'll have more on the way. This came early on, and I just let it go. But when we were talking about the Amazon thing, and I thought we'd hit some of them, the question was, well, what do I do? What am I supposed to do? I'm trying to remember the phrasing of it. The gist of it was, what kinds of best practices from online retail, from B2C, are the important ones for me to be considering as B2B? So we hit on some of them. Maybe, are there others we didn't hit on?
I think what's important is that you do need to have a 360 view of your customer. And I think we kind of tend to forget that in the B2C world. We always focus on, we need to know who our customers are. I think B2B, it's a step further. You want to give them the tools to be able to work with the site. And it's not just about purchasing with you. Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example. If I'm buying from a retailer and I have physical stores around the United States, why not give them the tool to upload their history of the store so that you can report back what is their trends of the different stores? So, for example, women wear does better in Texas than it does in California. So you know that your buying strategy should be more for women wear in Texas. So it gives them the tools to understand their customers on your platform. Then it gives you the ability to upsell. It gives you the ability to sell more to your customers. So having a 360 view of your customers, of their customers, makes your platform a lot more valuable.
Right. And you're touching on, certainly I think a whole interesting area we didn't even explore, which is your e-commerce site and your web presence as a source of data that you use to improve your business in all kinds of ways. Right.
And I think, we kind of mentioned it earlier, I think purchasing, and B2B purchasing is definitely a priority, but purchasing is just one aspect of it versus in the B2C world. In B2B, you want to tend to have longevity with your customers, right? So you want them to be on the platform that allows them to grow their business. So the longer you have a customer and the more valuable their business becomes to your business, the more you could upsell to them.
So there's another question, we may have answered this, but it's very related to this that came in. How much of a priority is customer-facing reporting in the B2B world?
From a scale of 1 to 10, I would say probably right now 8.
Okay.
Because right now, and we deal with this today, we get reports from all the various systems. You mentioned one-stop shop. You mentioned how do we provide the capability for a customer to come to us and deliver the whole gamut to us without dealing with multiple customers, right? So reporting is important because how do you provide them the reports to understand what they need from you, what they need from their customers, right? So giving them, once again, giving that complete view of not just what you need to know about your customers, but what they need to know about their own consumers.
Got it. All right, let's move on to another one. And I think you maybe touched on this in your earlier slide, but when you're talking about product recommendations, how do we, if I'm buying volume for a business versus buying individual items for myself,
right?
How do these recommendation strategies, do they change in any way?
I think in terms of the underlying purpose of recommendations don't change, but I think the strategy about recommendations change. It's no longer, this is just my perspective, they're no longer an algorithm or a black box algorithm to match it based on a category that you searched on or you purchased from. I think it becomes more of a business strategy. It's more, what have I seen my customers purchasing, and it's not necessarily recommending them to purchase more, but it's, once again, earlier, it's upselling them to different categories. It could be upselling them to different suppliers that you want to push. So the strategy around recommendations is a little more complex, a little more business-centric than category-centric.
And this probably also varies a lot from business to business.
Absolutely.
Right? I bet you there are, not to pick on an earlier example, but if I'm Lakeshore Learning and I'm selling to a teacher who's buying for their classroom, it might not be all that different from selling to a parent.
Correct.
Right? But in some other environment, if I'm buying bulk parts that I'm going to use in a massive manufacturing environment, then they're probably very different.
Right. Give you an example. You're selling to a project that's building a hotel. Your buyer is buying only heating air conditioning units.
Right.
But you know that you also carry all the electrical outlets and whatnot as well. But they're not buying from you. So your recommendation...
But you know they're buying them from someone.
Exactly. Yeah. And they're moving 10,000 units. So how do you recommend something to them that to say, I could give you a better price?
There you go.
Right? So your strategy is a little bit different versus the B2C world. Yeah.
Sure. That makes perfect sense. And so you touched on one of the things. We had a question earlier, which is, what are the other things from the B2C world that we want to bring into B2B? And you're hitting this now, which is, another question we got is, well, what about the opposite of that? What about, what are the ways that I don't want to mimic what's in the B2C world because it isn't going to work for me? Right? And different recommend strategies is one.
Correct.
Some other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think giving your customers one thing we talked about earlier is that in the B2B world, there's bigger orders, right? There's complexities of giving a proper user experience when a customer has to navigate through multiple variations of a product, right? Giving them the ability to upload an order quickly, so or create a quote. I think saving cart becomes a little probably. It was a thing of the past. I think in B2B it becomes a little bit more important. You'll be able to build up your references of your items, not necessarily within a 4-hour window, but it could be within a 72-hour window, right? So as you walk around your different departments to find out what they need. So things of that nature becomes probably more important now in B2B than it was today for B2C, right? Your safe cart, your quote management, your ability to give them the ability to manage different users. So, for example, Tim, you have multiple people under you that need to purchase on behalf of you, and you might have to approve it. Right. So give them that user permissions framework that allows you to enable your staff to go buy with certain credit limits. Right? So there's differences.
And a food approval process, and then have that automatically tied back into my LDAP or whatever my hierarchy is to understand who can do what.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we're not telling the audience that B2B is simple. We're just saying that there's a lot of elements in B2C that are innovating B2B, but there's B2B requirements that don't fit in B2C.
Yeah.
And these are one of the things that we're talking about. How you enable a workflow that allows to enable credit limits for individual users, how you get an approval process that's built in that allows an automated process that if it falls within a limit, they could order, right? So things of that nature.
Yeah, how do you present when certain customers or certain employees within the customer have the ability to purchase some things but not everything, and other people have the ability to purchase other things? How do you manage all of that? I don't want to make a recommendation to you for a thing that you can't buy.
Right, yeah. So there's complexities in B2B, but our message is kind of like, don't bring that complexity online now. Understand where you could address that internally before you enable it online.
Yeah.
Right.
And recognize that your buyer, your shopper, your customer doesn't understand or care about those complexities inside of your business. Your work process is not your customer's problem.
Correct. Absolutely. Right. Yep.
So make it as seamless and easy for them as you possibly can.
Right.
So, all right. So I think we have time for one more question. So here's one that just came in. How many people do you have to dedicate to e-commerce to have a good B2B commerce experience? So how big? What does your staff need to look like?
Ooh, that's a very open question. It depends how much you have to support. So, I mean, I guess if we're asking about internal support staff, UX, UI is important. Site search is important that we just talked about earlier. So we just took those two aspects. You do need, as you know, Tim, site search is a daily, hourly maintenance, meaning that you do need to understand what your customers are looking for. You got to understand what your customers need, what their expectations are, and adjust your content and adjust your algorithms as you go. So even without looking at the back-end staff, you do need to look at a team to service your customer experiences, your site, your search management. I think content and product enrichment is the part that a lot of people kind of overlook. Yeah. That's actually a very big part of site search.
Sure.
You got to have enriched content so that your site search works properly.
Yeah, and just part of the whole user experience, right? We have a lot of customers who have this rich content, and that's one of the reasons they become a destination, because of their content.
Right.
And while people are there, they also buy some stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then what we find out is that people tend to have product information in various systems. And I think what's going to be a challenge and a task for a lot of B2B companies is bringing that product information into a central master location, enriching that content so that it's ready for any different channel. Whether that's offline or online, you still need enriched content. Yeah. You can't use outdated manufacturer information as a means to provide that data as a searchable content. It doesn't work.
And the opposite of that is you may already be generating that content because you need it for your catalog, you need it for your salespeople, you need it anyway.
Correct.
What you want to do is you just want to make it available online.
Correct. Centralizing it and so it's available for all your different channels is going to be important.
Yeah. Gosh, we're up against it. I think we could keep going, but I think we can't keep going because we make a promise to let our people, our busy B2B people, get back to their days. Albert Wu, thank you so much. Albert Wu from Intershop. This has been fascinating and enlightening, and I've enjoyed it to death.
Tim, thank you for having me.
Okay, thanks.